Imagine a time when Poland and Sweden weren't exactly on the best of terms. Well, that's an understatement. These two nations were locked in a struggle for dominance that would last almost 60 years, turning the Baltic Sea region into their own personal chessboard. In this video, we're diving deep into the Polish-Swedish War of 1600, a conflict so intense it was like the Game of Thrones of Eastern Europe, but with way more mustaches and fewer dragons. Let's start by setting the stage. It's the early 1600s, and Sweden and Poland are each looking to expand. Poland, led by Sigismund III Vasa, who funnily enough was actually born in Sweden, has his sights set on consolidating his power in the region. Meanwhile, Sweden has its own ambitions, and they're not about to let a little Polish expansion ruin their grand plans. So a showdown is inevitable. The war officially kicks off in 1600 when Sigismund tries to reclaim the Swedish throne after being ousted years earlier. Imagine it. Sigismund thought, why not have it all? King of Poland and Sweden. Bold move, Sigismund. Sweden, however, wasn't having any of it and quickly counterattacked, launching one of the first major battles of the conflict. And it was here that things started getting wild, a Baltic power struggle on steroids. Swedish King Charles IX, who took over after Sigismund's ousting, wasn't about to let Sigismund stroll back into Stockholm with a crown on his head. So in classic kingly fashion, Charles decides to invade Livonia, a hotly contested territory and crucial battleground. Livonia becomes a seesaw of victories and losses for both sides, with towns changing hands faster than a hot potato. And here's where it gets interesting. Each time one side thought they were about to make a breakthrough, the other side came back swinging. Sweden started using a new approach to warfare, involving an intense, well-coordinated infantry strategy that would later evolve into their famous Karoliner tactics. This wasn't just any military maneuver. It was almost like introducing a dance routine, but instead of jazz hands, it was all bayonets and muskets. And it's safe to say the Poles were not impressed with Sweden's new choreography. Then, Poland had its own ace, the legendary winged hussars. These guys were the rock stars of the battlefield, with their winged armor that looked fierce and probably made an incredible noise as they charged. Known for their devastating heavy cavalry charges, the winged hussars brought fear into their enemies' hearts. And you have to admit, they were like the 17th century equivalent of a turbocharged battering ram. Whenever they entered a battle, Swedish forces knew things were about to get real. The war dragged on, and with it came periods of tense peace followed by renewed skirmishes. Imagine living in a world where every time you thought things were quieting down, someone started throwing cannonballs again. This was life in the Baltic for nearly 6 decades. Over time, both sides suffered heavy losses, and the conflict grew into a full-blown grind. The two exhausted nations finally reached a settlement in 1660 with the Treaty of Oliwa. In the end, the Polish-Swedish War didn't lead to the kind of sweeping victories or crushing defeats that either side hoped for. Instead, it marked the beginning of the decline of the Polish-Lithuanian commonwealth and set Sweden on a path to becoming a dominant power in Northern Europe. But the legacy of this war? Oh, it's still alive in both countries' folklore, where tales of heroic cavalry charges, back-and-forth skirmishes, and one epic power struggle are still recounted to this day. So next time you hear about Poland and Sweden, remember, these two weren't always about peaceful neighbors and IKEA flat packs. They once fought like champions for the Baltics and gave us one of the most dramatic, mustache-filled conflicts in history.